Wherever you're listening in the world, it's a pleasure to welcome you to IsraelCast, the podcast powered by Jewish National Fund USA, your voice in Israel. I'm Steven Shalowitz, coming to you from the sidelines from the Jewish National Fund USA 2023 conference in Denver, Colorado. Yes, the Mile High City, where our featured guest on this episode is Erel Margalit, founder and executive chairman, Jerusalem Venture Partners and Margalit Startup City. But before we bring on Erel, just want to remind you that for over 120 years, Jewish National Fund USA has been the premier philanthropic movement for the land and people of Israel. While best known for planting trees in Israel, JNF USA contributes to Israeli life in so many ways, including community development in the Negev and the Galilee, preservation of heritage sites, supporting people with disabilities, and connecting high school and college students to Israel. To learn more and to see how you can contribute, do visit jnf.org. Once again, after all these years, hope you got it, jnf.org. All right, as for this episode, as promised, Erel Margalit is indeed our featured guest on the program. And just as a remind you about Erel's phenomenal background, he is indeed the founder and executive chairman of JVP, an internationally recognized venture capital fund, and Margalit Startup City Galil, a groundbreaking food and ag tech platform supported by Jewish National Fund USA. Now, under his leadership, JVP created more than 160 companies and manages over $1.6 billion, that's billions with a B, from some of the world's leading international sovereign funds, while Margalit Startup City has created tens of thousands of jobs in a wide variety of companies that define the international innovation economy. A former Knesset member, Erel is considered one of the chief architects of Israel's status as the startup nation, bringing innovation and entrepreneurial leadership to the country's most pressing economic and social challenges. His accolades and honors are numerous. In fact, he was selected by Forbes as the top-ranking non-American venture capitalist on its prestigious Midas, that's the Golden Touch list. And with that, Erel, it's an absolute pleasure to finally welcome you to IsraelCast.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, listen, in the interest of time, I just want to get started and dive in. I just first, in really broad brushstrokes, because we have a very international audience. And in fact, I should share with you, we even have listeners in countries with which Israel doesn't even have diplomatic ties. So let's get that out of the way, first of all. But if you can set up the conversation just by starting with really the mandate of Jerusalem Venture Partners, JVP, and the need you identified in creating it.
Yeah, so JVP is one of the leading venture funds out of Israel. Mm-hmm. I was working with the legendary mayor, Teddy Kollek, who was the mayor of Jerusalem. And at the time, I brought the vision to Israel that Israel can become a really strong technology powerhouse. When the mayor wasn't elected, I set up JVP. And I started with a small fund, a $20 million fund, then a 75, then 160, then 400, and so on and so forth. We're now on our 11th fund. And over the years, we were fortunate enough to create some of Israel's largest companies from scratch, both in places like Jerusalem, where we are at the old train station overlooking the old city near the German colony. We have music there and we have social projects there, so it's really fun. But also in the Negev, in Beersheba, where we created the cyber hub for the country with 20 companies there, 5,500 employees in cybersecurity. In Haifa with healthcare IT. And in the Galilee, the food tech center that we're going to be talking about today, which is really bringing together two capabilities that Israel has, the agriculture revolution and the technology revolution, which ties together in the Galilee, a place where nobody expected that would be one of Israel's biggest hubs. This is where we're doing it.
And before we talk about the Galilee in particular, can you talk about the importance of developing the periphery?
Yes. So a lot of Israel's economy and sort of jumped forward in terms of startups and ideas came from the Tel Aviv area. And so what we did is we did it first and foremost in Jerusalem, because I am from Jerusalem. I live in Jerusalem. So where we integrated both the ultra-Orthodox community. I know that a lot of people like to fight political fights with ultra-Orthodox. We engage, especially the women in the companies. The Arab community, you know that today we are at odds with Hamas, and we're going after them. But there are Palestinians that are actually cooperating with us in Jerusalem and across Israel. And in Jerusalem, we have one of the most fertile ground for cooperation. And so these are the kind of things that we're doing. And as leading to some really positive developments in the country. So what we're saying, innovation doesn't only need to be in Tel Aviv. So we created 7 new regions of excellence outside of the Tel Aviv area: the Galilee, the Negev, Jerusalem, the far north, the far south, places where you can do things that are different than what you're doing in Tel Aviv, but give the people in the periphery, people in the Galilee and the Negev, a chance to be as successful as their friends in the center part of Israel.
And each one of those areas focuses on a different sector.
Exactly. So what we do, we're like a psychologist of a region. We come and listen, and we ask, what do you want to be when you grow up to be really successful? And most regions, and by the way, most cities around the world, they don't know how to answer this question. So what we do is we help by questioning and by listening. We do a listening tour. Sometimes it takes 12 months. We hear all the ideas. Most of the ideas are not necessarily the best ones, but then we come up with an idea that brings together the region's capabilities and some of Israel's and the international needs in terms of business. Because it doesn't matter how nice it is, it needs to be working from an economic standpoint. So in the Galilee, because the Galilee has the highest mountains in Israel, where you can grow cherries and whatever it is you're growing up there. And they have the lowest valleys where you can grow bananas and mangoes and everything in between. The Galilee is a small region that has all the agricultural strategies that you can think of. And the Galilee's kibbutzim and moshavim for years were developing crops and ideas that were second to none, but they never commercialized it in a way that startups do. So what we said is that if you have 150 PhD here, if you have so many people that are doing great things in food and agriculture, and you have Israel as a startup nation from technology, let's merge the technology and the food and ag and create a food tech, ag tech center of excellence in the Galilee, which is different than what you're doing in Tel Aviv, but we could kick ass for every other center of excellence. So we're working with 4 or 5 other centers in the world, but the Galilee is one of the leading centers in the world. And so you came from behind, but now because of the idea and because of the impetus and because of the partnership with JNF that gave us some support to some of the nonprofit initiatives that you need to have, because it's always public-private partnership. The Food Tech Center in the Galilee contributes to Israel's major food tech and climate tech initiative around the world.
And so let's go there right now. Let's focus in on what's going on in terms of Kiryat Shmona before October 7th, and then we'll get to post-October 7th and so on. But when you first got there, because you sort of hinted at what are its comparative advantages up there, but when you first got there, you did a listening tour, and can you talk about some of the initial findings that you unearthed there, and really what was your blueprint for the area?
So it wasn't easy. I mean, I created the cyber city of Beersheba in the south before I created the AI city in Jerusalem. Wasn't easy because Kiryat Shmona, the city that's there, was considered the poorest city in the country with $160 million deficit. The kibbutzim and the city were not really working together. Sometimes it's like 2 people who grew 400 yards from each other but have a different narrative of what Israel is. And so it was not so easy. And so in the beginning, they came up with ideas like tourism. And I said, tourism is wonderful, but you want to have 30,000 jobs, high-paying jobs in the Galilee for some of your brightest people. It's not going to be just tourism. Hot springs, bicycle trails, all that is great for the cover, but it couldn't be the substance. And so when we were walking to get a break in the old industrial zone of Kiryat Shmona, there's a place called Migal, which is a research and development center the kibbutzim set up 50 years ago to develop some new crops, some new ideas in agriculture. There's 150 PhDs there. In Russia, it would be the KGB center. It would be celebrated as a national. And I said, you guys didn't think of telling me that you have these research people here that are inventing things? Why are they just inventing things for their own kibbutz? They could be inventing things for the world. That's what we have here. And so we did it inside the city of Kiryat Shmona with the kibbutzim, tying Migal, which is the research center, with Tel Chai College, which is the college that's there that we want to move to be a university. and bringing the kibbutzim into Kiryat Shmona in an integrated fashion. The Druze villages, the Druze are the ones that live in Israel and in Syria. Syria historically is one of the strongest countries in agriculture when they don't bomb each other. So it's actually really interesting. Druze, Arabs, which have one agricultural strategy, some of it ancient, the kibbutzim, which has the modern agricultural strategy, and in the city of Kiryat Shmona, where you're creating it physically, where people are creating their startups, we're doing it together, we're celebrating the city, we have music places, we have other places, so young people are coming together, still not in huge numbers, but in great numbers, and are saying, this is the North, and we want to create the food tech hub for Israel, and we want to be the new pioneers on the new frontier of Israel, the North.
Showcase a little bit about some of the actual projects then there that are making up this really vibrant community. GCI, for example, the terminal, the hospital, and so on. And also a little bit more about the infrastructure, because again, families aren't going to move there unless there are medical facilities, unless there are schools for kids, unless there's, as you alluded to just now, entertainment opportunities.
Exactly. So JNF has been great, taking on a responsibility that we thought the government should take on, which is creating a medical center, like a frontline medical emergency center, because if you get wounded, God forbid, in that part of the Galilee, you have to drive for more than an hour. Or
if you have appendicitis.
Yes, unacceptable. So they're doing that, and they've actually opened it up to tenders, which are interesting, with Kupat Cholim, with some of the best HMOs in Israel, and we hope that's going to work out. It's going to be small, but it's important. The second thing is the innovation center itself. It needs to be a place, and now with the war, a lot of people are displaced, but it's still, when you have a community, you don't have to just be physical. You can get together even on Zoom and in other ways, because you create a community. The startups are not alone, because startups were not there. It's not like Tel Aviv or Jerusalem or Haifa, where you have hubs of startups. It didn't have a startup hub. It didn't have a lot of startups that people thought that if we're going to create a startup, they should go to Tel Aviv. They should go to New York. They should go to the other part of the world. No, you can stay here and create it. And these are the other people that are doing it. And by the way, startups are not always successful. So on your first project, you could be so, and then you can go to the next thing, but you have the support. And failure is not a dirty word. It's a word that means that you tried, but you take these things that you didn't succeed with, and you go to your next startups with the people there, and you're much more successful. That creates quite a bit of jobs. And then in addition to that, you have communities. You have the women communities of Galilee Ladies, which is an amazing project of 1,200 women entrepreneurs around the Galilee. And when women get together and they're entrepreneurs, and it doesn't matter if they have a startup, if they have an ice cream little shop, or they have a hair salon, I don't care. They're entrepreneurs. And if they get together, they give each other ideas, whether it's small businesses. Today, during the war, they have to survive because they can't continue to serve their customers because they have to be evacuated. So how do you continue to bring your service to people, and how do you continue to do things? How do you get a loan from the government? How do you get some support so that you can continue to operate? How do you get emotional support in time of stress? People don't realize how stressful some of these things are. And so that's just one example of a community that got together that's fairly amazing. And then with Or, one of the community managers that we had, she managed a theater and a live music place in Tel Aviv called Tmuna, which brought together a lot of the Israeli musicians and artists. What she's doing is she's doing start art, which is artists that are connected to technology. And then she's also inviting a lot of performers to come and give a performance. We just had the biggest street concert in Kiryat Shmona with the conductor of the Israeli Philharmonic. This is a city that didn't get such a concert. But in addition to the professional musicians, we had three bands and three choruses, one from the kibbutzim, one from the Druze villages near the Syrian border, and one from Kiryat Shmona itself. And these were kids that were playing and singing together with the Israeli Philharmonic Orchestra players. It was like 1,000 people outside. It was in the summer. And sometimes you do great things economically, but you do something socially with music, with culture, with goodwill, and you're saying, wow, we're on the map. We're on the map culturally, just like we're on the map economically. We're becoming a place where maybe young people in Israel can choose it in order to come and live here.
Erel, I know it's sort of like asking if you have a favorite child, but is there a startup in the North, an ag tech startup that you're particularly excited about, or you just want to give a shout out to?
So I'll give 2 or 3, but really quickly so that we don't, so there's a company called Innova Pro, which is doing chickpea protein. It's subsidizing soy and some other protein with really good alternative, because the white powder of the chickpea has no taste, no smell. So it's the best kind of white powder that you could put into the foods, and it makes the new ice cream, the new yogurt, the new mayo very tasty, just like if you had real milk or real things. But it's vegan and it's fantastic and it's unbelievable, and it's the tastiest new protein that you can add. Kinoko, 3 women invented this fungi, this mushroom that you put on lentils, that when you bring it together, the texture is like meat. So you're creating a fungi kebab, a fungi chicken, and you think you're eating chicken, but you're actually eating mushrooms on lentils that the texture makes it feel like it's meat. And so they're now sending it. They have a big project with Tnuva, which is our partner in the Galilee, but now they're sending it also to Australia, to other parts, where this is going to become sort of a veggie burger, but real veggie burger that has some of the best taste in the world. And then finally, science fiction. There's a company in the Galilee that uses tobacco plants to grow insulin inside the tobacco plants. And what does that mean? It means, why do you need insulin? Insulin and other growth hormones are the most expensive ingredients to make what's called clean meat that you develop in the lab. Today, when you develop a meat in the lab, it costs you $900. You needed to cost, $9. And so, and it's really tasty. It's real meat, but you need ingredients to grow the meat in the lab. And what these guys are doing are growing some of these ingredients in cost that is 1/100th of the cost that what you need to buy today. And you're growing this inside a tobacco plant in a way that's organic. And you can understand that farmers that are growing it have suddenly a crop that they can grow and they can get so much money on because it's worth so much, with the science and with the idea. That's what's called ag tech, food tech, biotech coming together for the world and what it needs. Because if you can have clean meat, if you can develop meat in the lab that's just going to be as tasty, we won't have to slaughter 50 billion cows a year. And even if you don't like cows or you like cows, the kind of pasture that they need to eat, they're turning the entire earth into a place where you need to feed the cows rather than feed the humans.
Erel, just on a personal note, you're speaking to a vegan, so this is music to my ears, and it's all happening up in Kiryat Shmona.
Food is going to change. We cannot continue to eat the same thing. In the next 10 years, food and agriculture will change in a big way. But people are spoiled. When you come with a new food category, they need to like it like they like the old food category. If they like it, they'll adopt it. If they'll adopt it, it will become commercial. If it will become commercial, the world will go after this and actually adopt the new technology.
Yeah, because it's all about taste at the end of the day for the consumer, isn't it?
Exactly.
Right.
It needs to be tasty.
Listen, Erel, I want to pivot now to October 7th. If you can just share your thoughts on the impact on technology innovation in the wake of October 7th.
So, I'm in addition to being an entrepreneur, I was for many years in special forces of Golani, and so we've learned both. We know Hezbollah from before, we know Hamas from before, and we were involved. And the kind of things that happened in October 7th, many of the people in the Israeli public felt like the government left them neglected. The government wasn't there. It wasn't there in terms of priorities of protecting the South, perhaps tomorrow protecting the North, and they felt like they were betrayed, and the massacre, the things that happened. I think we're grieving and we're so shocked that this has happened. It's a trauma for the country, the trauma for the Jewish people. But having said that, in that day of October 7th, even though the officials, the government officials, and the people that were needed to be there were not there, there were acts of heroism from civilians. There were acts of heroism from soldiers that came spontaneously, that will be told for many years, that saved many, many lives. After October 7th, Israel did a refresh, and the IDF is now on the ground, fighting in tunnels, fighting on the ground, fighting with people that are in buildings 4 stories above the ground, with airstrikes, with tanks, with commando units on the ground, in a way that's very, very difficult. It's very difficult to fight an organization that used billions of dollars to build 500 terror tunnels underneath an entire city, and is using all his resources in order to attack Israel. Having said that, what that brought is to the evacuation of many people from the north and from the south. So we have a big economic challenge because these people are no longer in their place. We need to bring them back to their place once we solve the security problems. And so we are facing a security paradigm shift. We're not going to be next to Hamas. We're going to need to eliminate them both in military and, in diplomatic ways. We will need to work with the Arab countries like Egypt and Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Bahrain in order to create an Arab a supported establishment in Gaza, which is not going to be for death; it's going to be for life. We are for the lives of Gazan people, but we're not going to sit there and let them put our lives in danger. So if they take out Hamas, maybe there's going to be an administration that we can work with there. And the same thing in the Galilee, where we're dealing with Hezbollah. We need to take them away from the border in order to bring people back home to the north. Doing all that, we're going to have a huge economic challenge to bring people back to what we had before. But in order to do it, we need a new deal in the north, a new deal in the south, to bring a massive amount of government and private investment into the region. And this is where JNF could be really supportive, because JNF has been entrepreneurial. It's not just a philanthropic organization. It's an organization that knows philanthropy, but also knows entrepreneurship. So some of the things that we're funding together are entrepreneurs. You're going to make money on it, and you're going to get to put the money back into work. And so all that needs to be defined in a really good manner so that the next phase will have the energy that it needs in the face of adversity.
And what are you hearing from the international business community now vis-a-vis the economic climate of Israel now, as well as, say, for example, over the next 6 to 12 months?
So, we have 55 startups, and we have a bunch of other startups that we're supporting in different ways. We say a few things. First, take care of your employees and your people. 2, work with the CFOs in order to take care of the payments that you need to pay every month so that you meet your payments and everybody gets a salary. 3, meet your goals for the year and set good goals for next year. In other words, continue to push your business despite of the adversity. And that means that you continue to work internationally. A lot of the Israeli startups don't sell in Israel, they sell international. I'm here this week in New York when many of the Israeli companies, some of them people are on reserve. They're coming to New York in order to meet customers, meeting customers and being in their face and saying, we're here to continue to deliver the product is so important these days. And I was just meeting with a big expert in the food industry or cyber. We're big investors in cybersecurity. We're big investors in cybersecurity. It's actually getting more business now than it was getting before. We're very big in fintech and insurtech and enterprise and AI. AI is a big theme in the world. So, but you need to continue to push your companies forward, because adversity creates a challenge. But if you get organized, you can meet the deadlines, you can meet the products, you can meet your goals and continue to develop the company. Because at the end, the victory image is not just on the battlefield. It's going to be in the economy. It's going to be in the social aspects. It's going to be young people in Israel continuing to thrive, to have jobs, to build their companies, to create new things, to create new music, to create new medical things, and to be there so that life will continue. The biggest difference between Hamas and us, they're for death, we're for life. So sometimes we have to fight and even kill people who are trying to kill us. But we remember that the ultimate goal is the livelihood of our communities.
Erel, when I started this conversation, I mentioned to you that we have a very global audience. We have listeners in countries with which Israel doesn't even have diplomatic ties. And do you have a message or something that you would like to share with a global audience about Israel that you think might surprise listeners? In other words, like I look at information or knowledge, if you will, is almost like an iceberg. You see the 20% up top, but there's the 80% below. So can you shed some light on that 80% below that listeners might need to know about?
Yes. Well, first of all, people look at the current conflict and say it's a conflict between Jews and Arabs. Not true. We have strong cooperation with the UAE, with Egypt, with Saudi Arabia, with Bahrain, with Morocco, with other countries. Israel is working economically with some other Arab countries that do not see fundamentalism as something that needs to be in the region. It could be ISIS, could be Hamas, could be Hezbollah, could be Iran with its proxy military states. They want to fight them and get them out of their countries because they're ruining their societies, not just Israel. So Israel can be working with the Arab countries. And if it could be working with the Arab countries, it could be working with other countries, first economically, but then also politically. And economically, because most countries need new categories of food, healthcare, cyber protection. The concept that Israel is inventing, the concept that Israel is working on, I think the region can benefit from. We say 10 cities, 10 ideas, 10 projects that will change the way you think about the Middle East. We call it the power of Yalla. Jerusalem, Ramallah, Bahrain, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Riyadh, Morocco, Casablanca. All these places can work together. It's not just about countries, it's about regions. Regions that can be relevant, have a big battle with other regions around the world. If they don't want to be behind, they should be doing things to come forward. So we talked about the periphery. I say innovation can change a city like Kiryat Shmona. It can change an entire country like Israel. But innovation can also be the bridge to our own region in the Middle East for more cooperation, less fundamentalism, and giving young people around the region a chance to unite about something creative.
So we had Nissan Zevi, your colleague, here on the program a bunch of episodes ago, and I asked him, actually, what is Erel Margalit's secret sauce? And he told me, he said that you believe that you don't think about the how, you think about the what.
That's right.
And I want you to elaborate on that.
Well,
and by the way, do you think that is your secret sauce?
Well, Nissan Zevi is one of my secret sauces because he manages the Galilee and he's doing a phenomenal job. Some of the secret sauce is having people that sort of share your vision and bring you ideas that you didn't even think about. So Nissan is one of them. He's now in Israel. He's part of the squad that's protecting Kfar Giladi, and he's recruited and is training in order to meet any Hezbollah guy that comes in. And so it's a duality of being an entrepreneur and supporting the center, but also protecting the region. So what I'm saying is that once we have a vision, people always think about, well, how are we going to do it? It's going to be so difficult. How can we create 30,000 jobs in the Galilee, high-paying jobs? And I say, don't interrupt yourself with a how before you define the what. Define the vision. Once we have the vision, we know it can stand. The North is going to become the food tech center of the world, together with 2 or 3 other centers in other places. That means that it will create many jobs, many ideas, many inventions, maybe many things that could give a lot of young people a chance to work at high-paying jobs that are different than the ones in Tel Aviv. So once you understand that and you picture that, build the projects in a bigger way. Don't build it like a nice small thing. Nice small things you can do with somebody else. We do things together. We build ambitious things. By the way, some things we won't succeed. It's okay. We have a community that can support each other when we're successful, but also when we're not successful, when we're evacuated from the Galilee because of missiles. We are going to still succeed and use the adversity to take the energy after the war and multiply it with people like JNF, with individuals like we have in this conference here. I was just meeting with amazing individuals. They can contribute so much from their own business experience by connecting, by understanding, by seeing if they can do some of their own business ideas in the Galilee, work with them in the US as they try to find a distribution partner, do things that could really help, and do it both in terms of a philanthropic fervor, but also remember, you can make money and invest in the Galilee. That's going to be the longer term way in order to do it in a way that's win-win for you and for the region.
Erel Margalit, we're going to leave it right there. I hope this is the first of many conversations that you have with us here on IsraelCast.
Thank you so much. Just remember, Israel is now, after a very dark hour or in the midst of a dark hour, looking to come out of that dark hour with a message of light, creativity, innovation, partnership, and that's what we're doing in the North that can give other people a lot of inspiration.
And even stronger.
Yes.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. Once again, Erel Margalit, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of IsraelCast. And we'll have info and a link to all things Erel on the show notes page of this episode on our website, jnf.org/IsraelCast. And just as a reminder, we do release new episodes of the show every other Wednesday, so do mark your calendars. And you can download episodes by visiting us at jnf.org/IsraelCast, or you can download IsraelCast wherever you like to get your podcasts. And as I say, it takes a whole moshav to put IsraelCast together. For that, we thank Vivian Grossman, Dara Shapiro, J.D. Krebs, and Ellie Kadrin. Our editors are Jay Rothman and James Casada from Miratone Studios in the very heart of New York City. And the music that you hear at the top and tail of the program is titled My Eden. It's by the very talented Rafi Malkiel from his album Water on the Tzaddik label. IsraelCast is powered by Jewish National Fund USA, your voice in Israel. For more info about JNF USA, do visit jnf.org. And if you'd like to write to us with story ideas or just to say hello, I know Erel would love to hear from you, and so would I. So do email us at israelcast@jnf.org. Meantime, I'm Steven Shalowitz. Thank you for tuning in and looking forward to having you join us on future episodes of IsraelCast.